According to most religious people, a lack of belief in what they believe results in an eternity of suffering in a place known as hell, to which there is no escape or redemption of any kind. In my last video, I gave a simple argument as to why a belief in such a place is irrational. To summarize, there are many different factors that influence our decisions on a day-to-day basis, making what we believe a poor measure to judge someone's eternity. I left off at the one and only argument that religious people use, the only thing that explains how a loving God would allow his creations to spend eternity in hell. Free will. God granted us free will. It is our choice whether or not to follow him. Those that choose to follow him and believe in his name will be saved, and those who don't will suffer eternal damnation in hell with Satan and his angels. According to this, it is our choice, and only our choice, of whether or not we get into heaven. The concept of free will dictates that we are in complete control of our actions. In order to be held 100% accountable for our actions, we would have to be 100% in control of our actions. The snag here is that in order to have complete control, we would have to be impervious to outside influences. If we are susceptible to any outside influences, like, well, anything really, but for the sake of specificity, let's say the words of other people, then we have a problem. Many people have converted to certain religions based on dreams, meaningful events, and the words of other people. If you remove these events, dreams, or words from their lives, their conversion never takes place. There are also those that are converted to atheism or agnosticism due to arguments made by other people. Without those arguments, the people would still be believers. It is the actions of other people, both directly and indirectly, which affect our daily lives. Can it really be argued that people have absolutely no sway over each other? That our free will is so powerful that no one, not even God, can sway it? God, being the all-knowing being that he is, would not be capable of condemning a person to an eternity in hell based on the actions of others. Let's break it down to even simpler measures. Psychology shows us that certain types of behavior are known to be genetic. I doubt that anyone credible would deny that our brain houses our intelligence and our ability to think. It is our ability to think that affects our judgments. The reason people behave differently on drugs and alcohol is that the brain chemistry changes when people take these substances. The very fact that our brain, which the organization of its features and capabilities are based heavily on genetics, another thing which we cannot choose for ourselves, can be influenced by substances that we either choose or do not choose to ingest, kind of takes free will out of the equation. This is especially true in the case when someone is drugged and does not choose to take that particular substance. Again, it doesn't matter how often something like this happens. It only matters that it happens in the first place. Also, there have been numerous instances of people with brain damage, or those of whom had to have part of their brain removed. In many, if not all of these cases, their basic personality is changed. If it is our soul that determines our actions, how is it that our personality changes when the brain is changed? It has been shown that decisions are in fact made in the brain, which again the type of brain is chosen by genetics, which is also influenced by outside interactions, or as they say in the psychological community, stimuli. A common argument to parts of what I've just said is that God comes to you in some form, or will send someone to you to bring you over to Jesus. This brings me to a discussion on the first part of what I call the free will paradox. There are instances in the Bible in which God directly and completely tampers with free will. In Exodus, it is said that God hardens the heart of Pharaoh many times so that he would not let the people of Moses free. Whatever his reasons are for affecting Pharaoh's heart, they are irrelevant. What matters is that this is an instance of God forcing the heart of someone to be a certain way. Does that not directly violate free will? Not only did God harden his heart, which causes Pharaoh to not let the Israelites go, but Pharaoh and the entire land of Egypt was punished for it through a series of multiple plagues and the destruction of his fighting force when the sea fell on them. Even if you take away that and any other instance that is citable from the Bible, there is also the belief that God can work through people. Now, how does God work through people if he cannot affect our free will? Sure, it is our choice whether to talk to someone, or whether to be at a certain place at a certain time, or any other type of action, really. How can God send someone to talk to you without affecting free will? It should be noted the implications of God influencing or even asking politely that someone do something. By doing this, God alters the future of that person.
Since God is both omniscient, all-knowing, and omnipotent, all-powerful, then he would not be able to do something to us, including whispering in our ear, without knowing the outcome. Since God is the one that supposedly gives us free will, it should be agreed upon that God himself would have his own free will. Whenever he affects us, he changes the course of history. Changing the slightest detail could put history in a completely different direction. You cannot have a being that knows everything that has happened, that is happening, and that will happen, and have the same being influence things in any way and not have it be his or her fault. This is the second part of the free will paradox. So let's say that God doesn't actually affect free will. He doesn't whisper in our ears, he doesn't send anyone to do anything, such as a pastor talking to a fallen one, or a rich man to give to the poor. Even if this doesn't happen, there is still the third part of the free will paradox, which directly relates to cause and effect. For argument's sake, let's say that God made the world, and just left it alone and let everyone here on earth go as they please. Still, being the omniscient being that he is, he would have set up everything to be exactly as he wanted it. My philosophy is centered around cause and effect. Newton theorized that if someone or something was able to know the position and velocity of every atom in the universe and understand all of its properties, then they would know the course of history for the entire universe. This describes what God, and pretty much only God, should be capable of. At any given moment, he would know the position and velocity of every atom in the universe. Anything he does, he would know its exact effect. So it doesn't matter whether or not he influences people today. The current belief is that God made the world, put exactly everything where he wanted it, every mountain, every valley, every particle of air and water. He also made man, made woman out of a rib, and put them in the place he wanted them. At this point, before either man or woman drew their first breath, God knew what would happen. The Bible says he's always known what will happen to us here on earth. Most believe God operates outside of our linear existence, but even so, it does not make sense that God would know everything, make existence the way he wanted it, make man the way he wanted it, and yet not be in control whatsoever of anyone's actions. Even if we believe there is a spiritual aspect to our decision-making, we cannot deny the biological part of our decision-making. It was previously mentioned that we can see the brain thinking, making decisions, responding to different stimuli. This is how it goes. Our sensory organs, our senses, taste, touch, sight, sound, and smell, take in different stimuli such as objects, words, faces, sensations such as hot, cold, rough, or smooth. Our brain processes those sensations and cross-references them with previous experiences and memory and decides on an appropriate action. Even if our souls were in complete control of those actions, the actions can only be made within the context of the current situation. The current situation is influenced by other people and previous events. Previous events are influenced by the events that came before that, and so on, all the way back to the beginning of the universe. If God really did make the universe, then eventually it comes all the way back to him, in the beginning, when he formed, everything, as it is believed he did. The third and final part to the philosophical proof series will continue to show the reasons why the theistic version of free will is indeed a paradox, touching on the actions of Jesus, the existence of the Native Americans, as well as discussing the very nature of free will itself.